All right, everyone.
Sounds good.
We should be good to go. Can you guys hear us? Can you just say something, Terry, please?
Hi, I'm Terry.
All right, so I got Terry here. They can hear us. So sweet. I got Terry here. He's the CEO of Iron Mouse. Is it Iron Mouse Games?
Just Iron Mace.
Iron Mace. Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't know what's Iron Mouse. Iron Mace. Developers of Dark and Darker. So, dude, this game has hit everyone by storm. Like, everyone has been loving it, and everyone that I play games with in the industry have been like, I've got this feeling I just need to play the next like play test. They want to get involved in it. The game is honestly so much fun, and the simplicity of the game actually makes it really fun because it's like you don't have to be someone like from Chivalry or a Mordau background to be able to enjoy it. Like the little things can make the game fun.
Oh, so yeah, your comments on that is just like it hits home because that's exactly what we were going for. So yeah, for us is we wanted this game to be complex enough that there's a learning curve, and so if you learn the game and you gain knowledge in the game, that's a skill in itself. But at the same time, we wanted at least like the game mechanics to be approachable enough that at least from the very first like 5 minutes, you're not a master, but you could still get an idea of what we're trying to show you. And I know it's a little bit janky, and like at first people see the combat and everyone, their usual comment is like, why are they underwater? Why are they so sluggish? And so we're used to all those comments. And for us, but these were active, direct design decisions that we went with. And so like when people have fun, and maybe the first impression is not so good, but our thing is when people actually play the game, and if they're having fun playing the game, then that was our goal. Yeah. And so we appreciate like when people get that.
When I first played the game, I spawned in and I died to the first skeleton, and I was just like, what? And
join the club.
And instantly I was like, okay, so there is like a little bit of like learning curve to it, but it's simplistic enough that you could just pick it up. Once you get some mates together, you can actually have a lot of fun. It's I've got a lot of questions, but I want to start more with the history. So how many, like, let's say, how did you get into what you're doing? How did the company evolve into becoming what it is? And then how did we get into having Dark and Darker exist?
Okay, so I guess we'll start with the history of Iron Mace. That's the easiest starting point, I guess, is so we started the company, we incorporated the company November 1st last year. So we just recently celebrated our first birthday for the company. But the people at Iron Mace right now, so we are currently at 25 people, the company itself, and we just hired, our newest hire came in last week. And out of the 25 people, 24 of the people are developers. So they just work actually developing the game. And then the one remaining person, he ensures that the office doesn't blow up, or like the company is still here the next day.
I call that the get shit done person.
Yes, exactly. So that's how we're structured, and we've been around for a year. Prior to starting this company, we actually so when we started Iron Mace, and we're collecting our teammates to build this company. Even before that, this is back in September last year. So 2 months before we actually incorporated, we started rounding up, people that we felt will be interested in taking this risk with us. And so the background of the developers in the company, we have first of all, our location, we're located in Korea, South Korea. We're located in this city called Pangyo, which is like a suburb of Seoul, and it's where like a majority of all the big game companies in Korea, they all kind of moved out to this one area. And so if you ever visit Korea and you want to check out all the game companies, most of them aren't actually in Seoul. You have to come down like 30 kilometers south of Seoul, and there's this place called Pangyo, where basically all the Korean game companies you can name, 90% of them are over here. And so, you know, our background, the majority of the team, we are all working for all these big, you know, well-known Korean game companies. But for us is, I guess, like, I don't know if the mood, like, you guys could pick up the same mood for the industry as a whole as it's moving, but at least in Korea, like, people are kind of getting disappointed with the direction of the overall industry, how it's moving, and in terms of how it's monetizing and how it's, I guess, in terms of the respect for the audience and the gamers, it was getting, to us, it felt like, oh, you're kind of getting to this line where it's getting a little bit more predatory. And so, you know, there was a group of us and the developers that were not as comfortable. And we're like, okay, you know, this is not exactly what we signed up for. And we, you know, the people on our team, we've had experience making games for like decades. So I've been a game developer since 2001. So a little over 20 years. A lot of the people, so
you don't look a day over 20
now. Oh, so I guess the iPhone filter is doing its job, but yeah. So I, like, previously at a lot of the companies I worked for, I was usually the dinosaur. You know, it was like, oh, okay, Grandpa Terry. But at our company, I'm actually like somewhere in the middle now. So that kind of shows you how much experience or how much veteran experience our team has. And so so we noticed it definitely, like, during those 15, 20 years, how the industry has been changing and how, like, the business models have been more exploitive, I guess. And so to us is, okay, that kind of disturbed us. And we wanted to try to do something where it's kind of more like a love song and a passion. It definitely is a passion project, but kind of going back to like the old style games that we played when we were growing up. So like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the games that we played with. And a lot of that, you know, back then there was no such thing as like microtransactions. And it was just like, okay, what kind of, like, we played a lot of hardcore online shooting games. And it was just like, there was no Steam back then either, right?
So it was like Half-Life, Unreal Tournament, Quake days. Like, honestly, exactly. I always felt like that was the gold mine of like gaming, because it was with the modding. Everyone used to do lots of modding stuff, and it was just every day they'd be like, "Oh, have you downloaded this mod?" There was like Team Fortress Classic, and then there was like Data Defeat, Natural Selection. There was so many fun mods in those eras. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's actually like a lot of our history is from those kind of days. So like, I think the last there was an interview we did with D-Trek, the DLC guys. And then they asked us about the fall damage. And so our eventual goal is to make the Dark and Darker world more grounded and stuff. But to us, it was fun to not put in fall damage right now, just because we played so much Counter-Strike, you know, when we were back then.
Yeah.
It was just like all the crazy, weird things you did because you didn't have fall damage in Counter-Strike. That was just like, oh, this is our little Easter egg too, because we love Counter-Strike so much. And so because, you know, we felt like the direction, this is, you know, a year and a half ago, and we weren't comfortable with how we felt like the direction of the Korean game industry was going. And so we decided, okay, let's kind of do something about it then, instead of just complaining about it, you know, over coffee and stuff. And so that's when we took that risk to say, okay, we feel like if we band together and we have enough experience, and then we could figure out something that people will enjoy and that could capture that. So the thing we always talk about is games just have its own soul. And what we were feeling were a lot of the newer games that were coming out, they were missing that soul. And so what we wanted to do was, okay, let's start with the soul of the game first and build something, even if it's janky, even if, you know, like the first production, you know, first impression with the production quality is not the best, but instead of just like style over substance, we wanted to start with the actual soul of the game. And so that happened back in August, and then we actually started getting like the core members together mid-September. And so, and we didn't have funding. We didn't have funding. And, these are veteran developers. So they have, pretty cushy jobs and high rankings in these big companies. So it was a big
risk
chore trying to, hey, come out, and we don't have any money. We have this kind of idea, but it's gonna be awesome. Are you guys in? And so, a lot of people, we got turned down a lot, and we don't blame them at all. But there was enough, people, colleagues, that we built enough trust over that period that during that time in September, we got the main core team together, and we told them we couldn't pay. We don't have money to pay you guys. So, and I was running a jiu-jitsu gym as like a little side hustle thing with a friend of mine.
Yep.
At that time, and then jiu-jitsu and Corona. So this was
rough time.
Like for some reason in a global pandemic, people don't want to do like an intimate one-to-one physical activity where you're like sweat dropping onto your face, right? So that business wasn't doing too well. I was like, okay, well, I have this gym that's pretty much empty most of the time. We can't pay you guys, but we have the space. And so, it was kind of a call to action. And those guys, they would bring their personal home computers and bring it to the gym. And that's how we started off. So, but the problem there in that story was we had like, the mats laid out. So like a jiu-jitsu gym, you have these, or like a judo jiu-jitsu gym, you have these mats on the ground so people don't get injured. And so we would try to put the computers and the fold-out desks on top of the mats. And it was
horrible.
Yeah. People are like, like on the like water, trying to type on water beds, right?
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing is, okay, well, we should at least put in the minimum amount of money to rip out everything and actually make it look like a normal office. So that's where we're at right now. And so it's a little bit janky here too. So right now, I didn't want to do the nose cam, and so I'm holding up my phone, and I have a stool as the background, as my tripod.
We'll have to get you a webcam.
Yeah, so that's our hopefully our next milestone reach is a webcam. But so that was our beginnings. So it was a pretty humble beginnings, and then but during those, that was mid-September until November is before we incorporated. We just had everyone, okay, so we can't pay you, but we know we have value as long as we stick together as a team. And so for a month and a half, that core team worked together. And even at that time, we didn't have exactly, we're going to do Dark and Darker, but we knew like our strength, working in the Korean game industry was online multiplayer games. And we had that kind of very broad and deep experience. So during that time, we decided, okay, well, we're going to need a server. We're going to need a multiplayer server anyhow. And we need to get all that backend stuff done. At that time, before we started the project, we knew, we wanted to work in Unreal. And the team itself, we had a lot of background in Unity, but not as much in Unreal. And so we decided, okay, so this is a good chance for us to start practicing and learning how to develop in Unreal Engine. And so it was a good ramp up time. And then in November, by that time, a lot of the ideas and stuff that for the game idea itself started to become more concrete. And we decided, okay, this is what we're going to go with. And so that's when we decided, okay, now we should be an actual company, and then try to find ways to raise money and do stuff that a real company does. So and we're still learning the ropes.
You've got a really cool story about one of the characters that we see in the game and how it became in the game. So the dog that's in the tavern.
Oh yeah,
I feel like people need to hear this story.
Okay, yeah. So we were struggling for a long time. So the way we started the company is that we incorporated, and then we had just enough money to start paying people for like the first month and a half. But it was like we incorporated with our own money. So it was like we were paying our own salary with the money that we started the company with. And we're like, okay, well, now we're running out. This is kind of getting dangerous. And so, we just started going out asking anyone, like all our friends and family and stuff. And so, I got to a point I asked my siblings, I was like, dude, so I'm the oldest sibling. I'm like, hey, just give me money. Yeah. It was basically like a threat. And then my sister was like, well, what do I get out of it? I was like, the satisfaction of helping your brother. She's like, oh, that's not enough. She's very good at negotiation. And so, my brother-in-law, her husband's like, oh, okay, so can we put our dog in the game? I was like, you got it, okay. And so that's how Otto came to be in our game.
Yeah, so Otto is your sister's dog.
Yes.
Being fun. I think that's the coolest story ever.
So, and Otto's one of the reasons the game is still here today, was if we didn't put Otto in the game, we don't know, who knows where we'll be at right now. So, yeah, and so that was the journey. That was part of the journey. And luckily, we lucked out, and having that kind of strategy of finding the soul first, and that's what we started building on. And we were able to find good, actual investment partners that had the same, I guess, the same line of thinking. And so, and luckily, during those times, like the development work that we did before we incorporated and all that stuff while we started to actually start building the game. So I think we have stuff on YouTube that shows our earliest prototypes, and it's just like the naked guy with underwear and like a long sword, and it's just like 15 of us just in this little box arena, and we're just trying to test out, okay, the hitboxes work, can we swing, and does the pattern based melee fighting, how's that feel, that kind of satisfaction. And so those are things that we built up and iterated really quickly. So by the time when we felt we started running low on those funds from our friends and family, and we're like, oh my god, we're gonna go bankrupt, and I just lost all my brothers and sisters' money. And luckily we built up enough in our prototype that it was like, oh, okay, and had enough to show like a concrete, actual playable game. So I think this is when we realized that, oh, okay, we have something special, is the way we were able to convince people to invest in us. Now, this is, earlier this year was, so I'm sure, so this is from the developer's point of view I'm looking at, but I'm sure like investors, they just get inundated with, hundreds of different requests for, oh, the next best stake. And, we were doing the same thing, right? So I watched all these YouTube tutorials, how to set up a startup pitch, and, trying to figure out who we could, and so we got, like, no joke, there was at one time, I think we talked to close to like 50 investors, right? And no joke, like 1 week, it was probably like 20, meetings in a week. And we're just getting rejected right and left, And then in the end, so the way we were able to find people that we kind of fit together with was we just, like, the pitch, it didn't matter. I think someone even told us, like, your pitch kind of sucked. Like they just told us up right.
But did they see the game? Because the game was just...
But that was, the thing that I think sold them was, okay, our pitch, these, who knows, these guys made up all these numbers. I mean, we put a lot of thought in. For us, we thought that we did all the due diligence, but in the end, it was like, okay, it looked bad. Like, oh, okay, we could see where it's going because we've had that experience being rejected so often. But it was like, okay, well, before you guys go, just play the game with us. Right? And so and luckily they are gamers, and so I think we sold them with the actual game itself. And this is when we knew. Oh, well, so internally we were having a ball. I think my biggest challenge as I guess management for the company. But like I said, we all wear different hats, multiple hats, because out of the 25 people, 24 of us are developers, and we don't really think of ourselves as but we do have like someone has to
do a tweet, someone has to answer the phone, pay the bills.
Yeah, exactly. But still, for us, we're still developers. That's our first priority, right? And so, but when I put on my manager cap, it was like, oh my god, my biggest worry is everyone just keeps on playing the game instead of making the game. And it's like, okay, we gotta. I mean, it's really good that people are into. And they will always be like, oh, I'm testing the game. This is QA, right? It's like, okay, we've gotten to a point it's stable enough, and we got to start focusing on development. But that's when we knew, like, oh, okay, this is something that we feel
you're onto something.
If we put it out to the public, yeah, exactly, we're onto something the public could appreciate.
And they did. Literally, like the first play test that it was not the one most recently, the one before, if I'm not mistaken. I only got onto the tail end of that one. I probably played, I think you did it for about 4 or 5 days, and I played the last 2 or 3 of that. And at the start, you could just see the graph. Like every day, it was just skyrocketing. Because when someone plays something good, it spreads like wildfire. And one of the cool things, I guess, with the whole playtest system that you've got is it leaves people wanting more. Instead of like going to the point like, when is the next stuff? I'm so burnt out, I can't play this game anymore. Like, you've actually made it in a if you continue to do it the way you're doing it, you're leaving people wanting more. And yeah.
Okay, so part of it is a strategy, but part of it, so doing the playtest in this manner we're doing it right now, is we have the very limited time playtest. So part of it is a strategy, but part of it is because for us, this is it is an alpha for us, and there's a lot of things that we're experimenting. So I mean, my partner, the main guy, that's the creative head, that's behind everything you see in Dark and Darker being the way it is this guy SDF. And so we're always talking about, okay, what's best for Dark and Darker. And so in terms of the playtest is in terms of developing Dark and Darker, is that a lot of times, through our experience as developers for such a long time, we know, okay, this is probably what's the right path. But there's still a lot of assumptions that we make. And to us, is okay, until we actually test our assumptions, we don't know if it's exactly right or not. And so for us, these playtests we don't understand why other companies aren't all not using this method, because for sure, their developers, their designers probably have the same kind of questions, but they don't have the right data yet, right? And so then they're just going to be assuming everything. And so for us is when we do have, we compile all these questions or assumptions that we have, and then we actually use the alpha playtest as our test bed too. So I guess that's why each playtest has different points that we're trying to figure out, what's the right thing, or hey, we thought this was right, but we're not sure. We're like 60% sure about that, but maybe we're completely 180.
Missing the point, yeah.
Missing the point. And so let's actually put it out there, and the players will tell us if we're on the right path, or if we mess something up, or we're doing something wrong. That and it's not when I say they'll tell us, I'm not saying so much that they're going to come into Discord and tell us the feedback just verbally or written. But we look at the actual data and the behavior. That's more important to us. And we're not saying that verbal feedback and that kind of one-to-one feedback isn't important. But then for us, it's because I don't, just like me personally, I'm just like, I like numbers, So
yeah. Because it's a way that you can go, okay, these are the things we want to test during this play test. You get that data and you can react to it if it worked out right or wrong. So,
yeah, but at the same time, we're not saying like that emotional response is just as important. So, okay, one example, the very, very first playtest, what we really wanted to test out was the darkness. because okay, the title of the game is Dark and Darker, and we knew we wanted the game to have, you could use darkness as a game mechanic itself, right? But then there was always this kind of back and forth tug of war between like, okay, do we want to have it like pitch black? But then it's not. Then so like, oh,
just keep going.
yeah, no problem. Yeah, so if we go pitch black, you know, one of the comments someone said back then was, "Oh, the game looks like a PS2 game," and I was like, "Oh man, you know." Then do we want to make it look a lot prettier? And so we experimented with a lot of different kind of lighting options and how dark we can make the game. So in the very first playtest, I guess it's the second playtest because we actually had a friends and family playtest before, but like the first public Steam playtest, you know, that was one of the main things we want to test. So we had multiple maps, and basically the biggest difference was the different type of lighting schemes for those maps. And so if you look at like really old videos on YouTube of Dark and Darker, you'll see that people just boosted their gamma to the highest, the brightness.
They can see through stuff.
Yeah, because they could see through stuff. And then, and that was an awesome learning experience for us. We saw, okay, so, you know, there's these sacrifices we have to make if we want to pretty up the game and stuff, then people are going to just, everyone's going to start, because it is a hardcore kind of competitive, you know, there's that element to the game. And so people are going to take any advantage they can. And so then we're like, oh man, so it doesn't even matter if we pretty it up because everyone's just going to do the maximum brightness and it's going to look disgusting anyways, you know? So yeah, okay, PS2 graphics, and let's focus on the mechanics. And then, but it was a blessing in disguise too, because as we started developing and going deeper into, okay, how can we still work within this, you know, the true blackness, our art team, you know, they started figuring out other techniques to make it look a little bit better. And so it's not like this horrid blocky 2D mess. Yeah,
I love the lighting factors because, for example, if you turn a torch off and you hide in a corner, you can't be seen. So like when I play as a rogue, I can actually sneak up on someone properly. Or if there's a big room, you can turn off like half the room's lights, and your team can be hiding in that room, and you've got that option. Actually, and it just feels immersive too.
Yeah. So So the reason that we were able to come to that point was because our first playtest, that was what we were interested in. Because if we didn't have that experience you're talking about, that specific experience you're talking about right now, might not have ever occurred. Because so this is a true story. What we did is we had the multiple maps with different lightings. So there's 3 different lighting types, and then people were trying to hide with the rogue in the first 2 lighting types. They couldn't do that. That play was because if you gamma boost it, you still see the outline. And then one of them, you could basically, it didn't matter. You gamma boost and far away, you could still see there's 2 rogues hiding right there, right? And so the last one, the ugliest looking one, that's the one. One of the streamers was playing that map. So I memorized all the layouts, and I could tell like, oh, this module is the super dark one. And in that map, one of the streamers in our first playtest did exactly what you're talking about with the rogue. And this was one of the fantasies that we said we had to fulfill, right? Is that kind of sneaky rogue assassin style play, and that actually occurred on that stream on that map. And we were like, okay, that's the data point. So when I'm talking about, okay, numbers matter too, but like having that emotional raw feedback too, that matters just as much. As we saw that one video and we're like, okay, the other lighting schemes, they're gone. And from that point on, we decided, okay, we're not going to do that, and this is the right path. And so these are things that we're continuing looking and experimenting in each of the playtests. So yeah, our playtests are having that limited window. Part of it is because you're right, we don't want to give everything out all at once. But the real reason we're doing these playtests in these limited windows is because we're trying to collect real data, and then that's going to give us the information we need to do to change or adapt the direction of the game for the next playtest.
That's really good. I really like the everything about this game. I don't know, the direction and just how your mentality and how you're developing it. It's really solid.
Thank you.
So let's talk about that's a good wrap up of the history of where we got to today.
Okay.
I want to spend probably the next 15, 20 minutes. We'll talk about where it's going, and then we'll open up for questions at the end. And we'll speed run as many questions as we can. You can do yes, no's, maybes, and that. So currently we've got I want to say, is it 6 classes, 8 classes?
Yeah, 6 classes.
6 classes. You're probably going to add a fair few more. Do you have like a list of the ones that you want to add?
Well, so the only one we've confirmed so far. Okay, so before I talk about the classes, I'll just just so you know, our goal with the game is So I joke with another. I forget who it was. I think I was saying it's basically Dark and Darker. Our goal for Dark and Darker is we want to, like, all those classic, worn out fantasy tropes that, you know, to us, that's not a bad thing. Like, you know, something becoming a fantasy trope, for us, that's our game design document. It's like, oh, okay. And so if it's traditional classic fantasy, there's a very high likelihood that we're going to somehow try to encapsulate that back into Dark and Darker, right? So and it goes back with our classes. So if you see our classes, they're very, you know, like the 6 classes right now, we started with what we felt were the most basic traditional fantasy classes. But at the same time, you know we're missing out on a lot of them. And so the one that we've confirmed that's coming next, but it's not going to be in this playtest. So, you know, I think it's going to take a little bit longer than we expected. But the next one coming is going to be the Bard. And I, you know, personally, I played a Bard in EverQuest. So, you know, I was pushing really hard for, okay, the next class has to be the Bard. And then I think from then on, you're going to see a lot of the other traditional fantasy classes. So, and for SDF, what he says is, at least for right now, is we want each of the class to feel special, right? So the way you play it should feel like, oh, okay, this is unique. So, and I think we did a fairly good job with the 6 classes we have right now. And I think Bard, our idea for how we're going to implement the Bard is going to be very unique and feel special also. And so we have a lot of different ideas. And if you've seen it in, you know, typical other traditional fantasy games, please expect it. There's a very high likelihood that you're going to see it in Dark and Darker eventually. Yeah,
I know you've touched on in a previous cast that you're going to have like races for each of the classes and all that. Is this to also like, I know there'll be little perks and appearance and all that. It's to kind of give the person who's playing that class their chance to give their own identity. Are you going to also do stuff like character customization to see how you can change how your face looks and all that kind of stuff as well?
Okay, so 2 parts there. Yep. So I talked about the races in the DLC podcast, right? And then, so another true story. Right after that, SDF's like, "Oh, why did you say that?" You know, and it's like, "Why?"
I wanted to surprise him.
What we were talking about. Well, he was like, "I'm not 100% sure about that." I was like, "Oh, what?" Okay, so, and then we had a deeper talk about it. So, so we're at like 90% sure that we're gonna have races, but there's still so that's why. That's the other thing that I want to make clear. And I felt like a broken record during that podcast. I was kept on saying, "Oh, but none of this is written in stone, right?" Yeah. So any of this, it could
subject to change.
And subject to change. But we're in the same like journey together, where, you know, we're having these thoughts. And so right now, you know, I can only give you like how we project out for the next couple months, and then what we're thinking right now. And so, so for races, is the reason I said that answer was, like, we were talking about what our goal with Darker and Darker is we want to make this a game where people could fulfill that kind of fantasy, you know, of a high, or not even high fantasy, but that traditional classic fantasy world, and I'm part of that, and I'm doing that dungeon crawl, and with my mates, and that's that kind of fantasy that we want to give. And so to us, it kind of did make sense that there will be different races, because that's the stuff that we grew up with, like the books and the games that we played. But so this is the last 2 weeks we've been. Now, when we, I said that, so it's kind of like a promise, and we're like, okay, so how do we actually do it? And we started going into the details. We're like, oh my God, wait a second, I might have spoken too soon. So that's why there's this 10% chance that, okay, but I mean, so these for us these are awesome, fun design challenges, and so we're gonna keep on drilling as far into it until we get a solution that we're satisfied with. So there is, I'm just bringing this up because there's like that 10% chance maybe we can't do races, because there's other, I guess, design pillars that, we're always considering. And one of the things that, we were talking about is like, we want, we always talk about, we want our game to feel fair, right? And one of the reasons that we started this company was like, we weren't happy with like any type of those exploitive business models. But then when we started thinking about, okay, how are we going to do races? And at the same time, we put on our business hat, and we got to make sure that the game, we can run our servers and stuff, or how do we monetize? And so trying to figure out this triangle and not making it pay to win, it was like, oh my God, this is a hard challenge. Is okay, so we don't have an answer right now. And so this next playtest, we're gonna be experimenting again. So again, what you see in the playtest doesn't mean that this is the exact implementation. But again, but we're gonna try collecting data, and so you'll see like a cosmetic or a race. We don't, and again, because we're collecting data, we don't know exactly which branch we're gonna go towards. But you'll see the beginnings of what we're trying to figure out. Right. So like the first kind of, it'll be a race. So first race, you'll see in the next play test, and you'll be able to kind of mess around with them, or mess around with it, I guess. Yep. In terms of the actual character customization, like faces and stuff, for us, that's a very low priority.
Yep.
So if it does come into the game, it'll be once we get all the other higher priority systems into the game first. Yeah.
So I'm under the impression that your main focus is to make sure the core and bones of the game is 100% like on point, and then once that's done, then you'll fluff it out with all the extra cool stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So to us is, we have a lot of developers on our team that have worked on like Korean MMORPGs, where you could basically, with all the sliders and stuff, you could, make like a carbon copy of like actual like, real life people and stuff. And we know how much extra effort goes into that. But to us, it's like, we would rather make a bunch more weapons, or make the animations just more satisfying. And, because again, right now we're a very limited small team. And so we have to be very careful about where we're focusing our resources.
Yeah.
And
so very like hard to catch back up on, and
so those kind of things later on, if we have that kind of liberty to do that kind of stuff, that'll be awesome. But our focus is on the core system, the fundamental systems, and the stuff that will actually add to the enjoyment of fulfilling that kind of fantasy fulfillment, traditional, classic dungeon crawler with your buddies.
All right. Yeah. So what can we expect over the next couple of months that you've projected that you're happy to say publicly? Including next playtest and then the potentially following playtest.
Yeah. So I guess the stuff I could say with the highest confidence is for the next playtest, because those are stuff that's being built right now. And, a lot of the systems are already built. So these are things that I could talk about with high confidence for at least for the December playtest. So I think the biggest thing, one of the things is we're working on the crafting system. So it's just gonna be the base system again. So we're experimenting, and we have an idea for how we want to flesh out the system eventually. But this time it's going to be the very basic systems of crafting. So you could go into the dungeon, get some kind of base material, bring it out, manipulate those kind of materials, and then build, items, or gear for your character. So hopefully that should at least like one item for each. Our goal this playtest is one item for each class.
So is the crafting going to be like RNG based? So you craft an item, you say you want to get like, I don't know, say a mace, and you craft the mace and it's going to give random stats, and it could be a rare, unique, etc. Or is it wait and see?
I don't know yet. So again, there's gonna, so we have a lot of different design tools that we could work with. So like you're talking about the different kinds of item rarity grades, and so we haven't actually made the. So okay, I'll be very honest. What we have in our design for the crafting right now that's set in stone is you could go in, get a material, bring it back out, and then craft it. But we don't have any of those details done yet, and so those, I can't give a concrete answer for that. So we'll see, and then whatever you see in the playtest,
what our first taste
might not be in the next playtest.
Yep.
The next playtest, you're like, what the heck? What's this system? I mean, if you look at the characters, you saw that skill tree, right? And it says coming soon. That was actually supposed to. So we put that in that coming soon back in October. What is it? September. The coming soon that graphic, and we actually thought we're gonna have that in for the October playtest, and then due to that response and what we saw, we're like, oh, okay, wait a second. The priority just shot down a lot, and people are having way more fun customizing. So all those perks and skills were supposed to be gated in that skill tree system. And we're like, oh, you know what? People are having so much fun and enjoyment just making their characters, and even just that simple progression of unlocking a little perk slot every 5 level, that people are having a lot of fun with that. And so, okay, you know what, we'll put this on hold, and then now let's start concentrating on other content, other systems that we could start building out. So that's why I'm so hesitant to say, I don't know what's going to happen with the crafting system, except, hey, you could go in. Okay, I'll give another hint is, there's a lot of people on our team that like Minecraft. So they'll give you a hint on what the first type of crafting mechanic might be. So bing, 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 bing. So, but besides that, we don't have the details yet, and we still have like 2-3 more weeks of actually doing the base development.
Yeah.
And so, that's one of the big things for the December playtest. And the other one, this is a kind of big one. I think this is like exclusive. This is where the first time we're mentioning this is, we're thinking of doing this thing called high roller dungeons. We mentioned, I think, with Peg one time, long time ago, in an interview with him, and then we just haven't said anything about it since then. But one of the concepts we're thinking about is this thing called the high roller dungeons, and this is something that was on our roadmap even like 9-10 months ago. And so, I actually made a poker game a long time ago, like a
family-friendly one.
Poker game. As family-friendly as it could be. But and and then we're making that. You discover this whole new world of poker. Like it's just that subculture is huge too, right?
Yeah, so
and I was like, oh
what
my
you're telling
god!
me is we're going to go into the tavern. You're going to have a poker table set up, and we'll be able to play poker. At the high roller.
Maybe an update. So our ideas right now for the high roller is that maybe there's going to be a special category of dungeons that you could go in, and you would have to ante. You would have to have a certain amount of ante to even attempt those dungeons.
Yep.
Yeah. And so and what we're looking to experiment here is in terms of the PvP density, and we could start messing around with like how many parties and how many people could go into each dungeon, and then we're going to start experimenting with the size of each maps. So like, the maps that we had, the previous playtest, one of the takeaways was, we felt like at certain times the density was higher than we were comfortable with, but then we actually liked like when there's a lot of PvP action happening, and so we're like, oh man, but we don't want to lose that feel either. Like if it's too loose, but at the same time, it's like there's some assumptions that we're making about, oh well, if it gets bigger and less dense, does that increase the tension when PvP
but as you bring
situation does occur?
This could happen any moment now, kind of thing.
Any moment, yeah, because
I don't know if this is public opinion, but I always felt, and this I could be wrong, but I always felt the circles were just like 30 seconds too fast. And that might be like an intention, but it was like sometimes like you just we want to take on this fight, but if we do, we're all dead. And I felt like just not every time, but sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. So again, those are the other stuff that, having just one set of dungeons is that it gives only one type of experience, and like having now like a high roller, higher tension, we could start kind of fiddling around with those kind of dials that we have. So even with the current circle speed right now, like you should have seen us in our internal playtest. They were like the circles were around 40% faster.
Yeah.
And we were
everyone's just speed running, just testing it all out, just figuring out where the sweet spot is.
And well, the current timing right now, it actually, so another true story is this actually came from the September playtest, and we were watching another streamer. It was Jonah Vale, right? And I went into the stream, and he was complaining about the speed of the circles. I was like, okay, let's negotiate the time of the circles in real time on this stream. And I was like, okay, well, I'll up it to 8 minutes. He's like, no, we gotta have 11 minutes. I was like, no, that's way too. And so I think the current speed in Inferno in the bottom map was because he insisted that it was way too fast. Yeah, I was trying to make it as quick as possible, and he was like, no, it has to be even longer. And then we agreed on some like middle point.
The issue became, at least with us, is like we had to pretty much pick between if we're going to try and search for loot or we're going to have to fight people, because it was like you kind of stressed because I don't have much time to search stuff, but I have to also fight people to make sure I got time to loot. But then if I fight people, I ran out of time to loot, and it was just I think you'll figure it out. But it always felt like, and maybe that's a good thing though. You always feel that little bit of like, oh my god, I've got this like pressure on my back that I have to make sure I get shit done.
Yeah, so you telling me that is like, oh, okay. I think for us, that kind of that's reassuring. Okay, we're not too far off of where we want to be, because we do want to give that kind of tension and that kind of pressure. So we don't want it to be so, and especially because I did watch your streams, and like when you have like the super high skilled team parties like your team that is just like vacuuming up all the noobs, I was like, at that point, I was like, oh man, I feel really like it's really entertaining. At the same time, as a designer, you're like, oh man, I feel so bad for the new players. And so there's that kind of balance that we're trying to figure out. And so giving like people the higher tier parties, giving them that little bit of pressure, I think that is a good thing. But there's always a lot of balance work that we have to consider.
All right, so I don't want to take up the whole day. So I've got a question for myself.
Okay.
Probably the biggest contention and issue I hear from everyone is they would want a solo queue. I think if you were going to do this, you could do a solo queue and then you also go in with duos, and the duos could go with trios, but you wouldn't have the solos with the trios. That makes sense. The duos could be randomized, or it'd be a solo with the option to go with everyone. Kind of like how PUBG did it. Now, I'm not saying you want to do it or not, but it's the only way I could see it happening, because if you just had solos, I feel like it would be, I don't know.
Yeah. So, okay. So this is things that we're considering also. And so So I'll tell you right now, like the normal and the high roller, one of the reasons we want to test this out right now is that at least with the normal dungeons, we're going to have the way we place the starting spawn. So I'm sure, you know, you guys, when you played the most recent playtest, there were some really god awful starting spots, and you're like, oh my god, hey, you would start right next to, and that was actually my fault. I'm the guy that made that memo, and I was like, and so that was a good feedback for us, saying, okay, we got to put a little bit more forethought into how we're going to do these starting spawn locations, and that's going to give people that kind of feeling of tension right from the get-go, or oh, this is insurmountable. You know, like I'm a solo and I start right next to a 3-man squad, right? And so, so before we go to the easiest solution, just like solo queue, you know, to us, that's just we like having these kind of design challenges to kind of, you know, make us think a bit, you know, try a little bit harder to figure out a solution that might end up being even better overall and fits the I guess the vision for the project itself. So the reason we're not just doing straight up solo queue right from the get-go right now is because when we envision Dark and Darker, like I said, it's that you're playing traditional fantasy, filling those roles, dungeon crawling with your buddies. And that, you know, that was the core driving thing. And so that's why everything right now is kind of balanced that way. But then, you know, in that kind of world, of course there could be solos, there could be duos and stuff. And so it's not that we're saying that's not the way to play, but we're still so far from completing that original goal.
It all out.
And so, yeah, and so we know that there's people that want that, and we, for us, it was honestly a very big wake up call. Like if you talk to SDF three months ago and you mentioned solo queue, Adam, 100%, he was like, "There's never going to be solo queue ever in the game."
So
and going through these playtests, yeah, sorry.
So the way I see it is there's an actual benefit to not having solo queues, and it is to help build a community, right? It forces people to go, hey, join a Discord, find some people to play with, and then people find friends and like that. But if you really want to brute force your way through a solo, you can learn to get good at the game, and then your survival rate's not going to be as good. It's like other games that are extraction based, that are hardcore. You're not always going to win, but at least when you do, you get that extra feeling of satisfaction. So it's kind of it sometimes can be quite overwhelming though, particularly if it was your first time playing the game and you're a solo player jumping in, and you get me, Sakura, and One Peg looking at you, and we're like, "G'day, mate."
Yeah, exactly. So at least for right now, without going the route of just doing a solo queue matchmaking, is because. So the other thing that we were really happy about, and this is a surprise that, you know, we found out through the playtest, is that first of all, we have no matchmaking formula.
Yeah, no.
It's just basically totally random. It's okay. Oh, there's 16 people. Let's put them in the game, and so, but we realized, oh, that's actually one of the advantages that people really like our game is that, oh, you know, you die, well, you get into the next match so quickly, right? And
it's
so
great. I love it.
Yeah, and so the reason you could do that is because that solo queue guy is going to be matched up with, you know, use Hector and One Peg, because we don't have any system in place, you know, to make sure that people are any kind of MMR system, right? And so, so this is, for us, it's a learning experience too. It's like, oh, maybe, okay, so the MMR system, if we do put that in, then, you know, we're going to be giving up some stuff. And so these are now, for us, challenges. We have to start calculating out, okay, what's the benefits, and, you know, how does that affect the overall vision of the game? And so in terms of doing like a solo queue, that's just another way that it's going to separate out the matching pools, and then it's going to make matching take longer, right? And so for us, is even doing high rollers, like that was our biggest concern, is like, oh man, one of our biggest advantages is these quick matchmaking times. But if we split even into 2 different matching pools, is it how big of an effect's going? Yeah. But we're curious. Seriously, how much difference is it going to make? And so that's why we're going ahead with this plan, and we're going to be collecting all that data to see what's the waiting times and how much difference it makes. And so for us, it's exciting too. It's like, okay, more data for us, and we have other like technical ways to make these things feel like more complex or more dense and stuff. But going back to solo queue, like you're talking about, yeah, that kind of situation, we feel like there's other ways that we could kind of ameliorate, those crazy like 1 versus 3 with the map density, different kind of spawn locations, and that's one of the big things that we're going to be looking into this playtest. And we're not going to get it perfect, we know that, but I mean, this is something we're curious. We feel is just as important because people have been asking for solo queue for so long. And then we're going to try a couple of our other crazy ideas first before we say, okay, we give up solo queue, that's the way. But hopefully one of our other ideas might hit home. And then, hey, we got, the best of all these different attributes all at once.
It's like someone just said, trial and error. And that's how you work it out. All right, I've got a question for a friend of mine. He loves making. He's a very, very famous Rust YouTuber whose name's Wellen, and he asked. He asked me to ask you: are you going to add any cinematic tools in that to be able to like film within the dungeon or replays of what happened during the dungeon or anything like that? Is that on the books at all? And you can give a yes/no answer. You don't have to go into detail.
So no, because honestly,
You've just crushed him, but continue.
Yeah, you can see my facial expression right now. It's just like, whoa, okay. So it's on my radar now, but that just means that it's going to take some time, and we have to start looking into, okay, what's the reality, how possible it is. Yeah,
some YouTubers, particularly Rust YouTubers, love making story-based content, and I think this game has a lot of stories you could make out of it. So I'm glad it's on your radar, but that's it's good that we got.
Well, it just got on our radar 5 seconds ago, so cool. It is there now.
I'm going to open up the questions to chat. I'll just ask them, and you can give a short answer of some sort. I know one of them's going to be VoIP. Plans for VoIP.
Yeah. So this play test, we actually had it on the schedule, and it was at the bottom part and it got cut off. So no VoIP this playtest, but it's on our radar, and it's actually fairly high priority. So either the next playtest or early access. That's what we're looking.
I think you could rotate items already, can't you?
No, you can't, and that's an actual design decision. So for us, it's like, okay, that's just adds to the tension, and we didn't feel like, playing that kind of mini game was the kind of feel that we wanted to give for the game. It's just like, okay, you grab items and.
How many? Sorry, keep going.
I love Tetris. Yeah, I love Tetris, but yeah, sadly that's the way we decided to go.
I'm trying to like get punched through a heap of these because I don't want to take up heaps of your time. So how many maps do you think there's going to be overall? What's your
for play? So again, this is a complicated question, because next play test there's going to be probably 2 crypt maps for the normal map, and then 2 Inferno, and then modifications of these maps for the high rollers.
That's good. Is there going to be a way that you will do some sort of like procedurally generated maps? Because they're all kind of modular with certain specific rooms, on like a rotation system or of any sort.
Hopefully, but so again, disclosure is, we thought that was going to be an awesome idea. So this is why I'm so careful. Is there's so many things when we first think about it, we're like, dude, this is money. This is what we got to do. So procedural generated maps, same thing. We're like, oh, this is the way to go. And then we actually tried it, and we're like, oh my god, we're really bad at making procedure generated maps. So at this point, we're like, okay, we don't have time or the resources to do all that R&D to make this good enough. So we joke, instead of AI for artificial intelligence, our company is based on HI. It's just human intelligence. Basically, that just means do as much, hard, everything handmade right now. So eventually, we'll see.
Shared stash between classes.
Again, so 2 months ago, if you asked us, for sure it's going in, and then we got to start actually designing that, and we're not so sure right now. Yeah.
Chat questions. Is there any end goal in mind for the game, like a storyline or something to grind for, like an end state? How do you complete the game?
So in terms of like an actual storyline, we're working on that, but more so as like the lore. So we're going to build up the lore of the game, and then we're going to do quests. So one thing to note is in our mind right now, it could change, is that we're looking at wipes, seasonal wipes. So, and putting in new content every three months, and the duration, all the details can change, but this is where our mind's at right now. And so in terms of this actual like heavy set storyline, I know SCF, he has something in mind and for this world, but for us, at least for the next like 4 or 5 years, we're just going to be world building.
I'm just punching through requests. You're good. Will progression always be as fast as it is, or can we expect the game to have slower progression in the future?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So we actually sped up all the progression because we thought the playtest was going to be three days. Like every playtest, we're like 3 days max, and we've never had any of our playtests actually be 3 days, just because we've always encountered issues, and then we always feel horrible. We're like, oh my God, so we've always extended the playtest up to this point. But all of the stuff was balanced around, okay, can we get enough people to try out enough content so we get enough data collected in that 3 days? And so the progression speed right now is highly accelerated. That's what I can tell you. So the next playtest, we're actually going to ramp it down a little bit, and so you'll notice that.
The next playtest, I think, is a week.
Yeah, it's a week, and and again, we're planning for that. So
slow it down a bit.
People should be able to get through. Yeah.
Cool. Arrows for crossbows, bows, arrows. Are they coming, or is it going to be like unlimited ammo?
That's our reach goal. So like I was talking, VoIP was one of our reach goals, but just because we've never implemented VoIP before, that's why we pushed it back, and we don't know when we'll be able to do that. But at least for the bow and arrows and the quiver, so we call it the quiver system, and then that's kind of locked in with the bag system. But we know we're not going to be able to do the bag system this next playtest because it's too big. But we might be able to start putting in like the first 10% of the quiver system if everything goes to plan for what we're building for this next playtest. But there's I would say like 90% chance that we're not going to get to it this playtest.
Is it going to be more of a place to hang out? You can fight against each other like in the tavern. Instead of just going straight into the game, can you like practice dueling with people and potentially trade like a lobby system where you don't actually just go straight in with poker?
With poker, yes. Lots and lots of talks about that. So and if you probably find one of our like old interviews, we probably talked about like arena and stuff, and so these are things that we want to do, but we don't have any of the details. And again, we spoke too soon. We're like, yeah, we're gonna have everything. It's easy to promise when we don't know the details. But even yesterday, we were talking about like, oh yeah, it would be awesome to have like a yard right behind the tavern and like a circle of stones and 1 versus 1.
You walk in.
Winner gets everything, and this is like a line of people. And so these are things that we joke about during lunch. So But a lot of the stuff we joke about actually end up becoming real features. So
the roadmap for release is the end of next year. Do you plan to do a full-fledged early access period before that?
That's the goal. Yeah.
Up until that point would be just doing the
playtest. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, our goal is to do our early access. Internally, we're thinking Q2 next year is, I think, building up enough of the systems, like the foundational systems.
Oh, sorry. Pause for a sec. My Discord does this weird thing where all of a sudden audio mutes. Go again.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So internally, our goal is we want to do early access in Q2 next year, Q2 next year. So sometime in the spring, hopefully. And up until that point, we'll still keep on doing these the alpha playtest.
Do you have a planned estimated cost for the game? Or you haven't figured out how you're monetizing it yet?
Yeah, but for sure now. So when we started, we're again, this is a perfect example of where
Chat wants to give you their money. They're saying specifically they want to give you their money.
Oh, so originally we thought we were going to do free to play, and we're pretty much 99%. We've closed the window on doing a free to play game, and so we're going to look into doing a business model of a package game. So like the things we've been looking at are games like Hunt Showdown or Dead by Daylight, and so that's where our current vision is at right now, and so we're looking into it, investigating again, but because our first duty as developers and our business development hats are
in the background.
not as yeah. So these are things that we're gonna start considering more deeply. So, but yeah, no price set yet.
Do you ever plan to rework the leaderboard at all, or you, from what you've seen so far, you're kind of happy with it?
Well, so the leaderboard is just totally temporary. It's just to give goals and just kind of like a fun, fun kind of thing for each of the playtests. So, like this next playtest, I think one of our, just to give like these high-end goals, right? So the next playtest, most likely the leaderboard is we're only going to track it for the high roller, because we want to see
how much people use it.
How sweaty a game could Dark and Darker could get. We realize it could get pretty sweaty, but we want to see how far we could push it with the high roller.
You did a really good job of managing the server load. I know there was a couple of hiccups on the first playtest, but the second playtest went fairly smooth.
That's because of the first playtest.
Are you scaling just because you're expecting more and more players each time?
Oh, so we again, this goes back to September last year. We knew we needed the proper server technology, and so our main server guy, he has like a decade of experience making these online games in Korea, right? So we knew that has to be scalable, and so the reason there were so few hiccups the last playtest was because we had all those big hiccups in the September playtest, and that actually helped us out a lot. And so we're much more confident now, is that even multiples of what we had this last playtest come in, we're pretty confident about that. There are some technical other like business decision reasons that it's not going to be perfect, but those are things we're going to wrinkle out. Those are the wrinkles that we're going to figure out when we actually have we actually have money to do that.
I'll go. No, so are you going to open up for modding at all, or any opportunity for people to do modding stuff?
I don't know.
Okay.
Again, it's kind of like the.
I'll ask this question. You don't have to go into detail with that one. If you don't know, you don't know. Is there any way people can invest into the company?
No, yeah. So like,
Because there might be
I
some
guess
oil prince in the chat right now with like $100 million just going, I'm ready. You bring me in, you know, like.
So in terms of like investment, I think we're at a we're at a stage that we feel we're pretty stable now. But at the same time, it's like if you know our history, we like taking risks and we like betting on ourselves, and that's why we're trying to figure out ways to do it with the least amount of
External
I guess
influence.
external, yeah, influence. And so that was the thing for us, was that having that kind of our own creative freedom to make, like, maybe it's a stupid, ridiculous choice, but as long as we decided to do that, then we will be happy. But if we start taking too much money from externally, then we kind of lose that liberty. So,
All right, 2 last questions. Are you going to increase the group size above 3 ever?
not in the near future. Yeah, I think right now 3 is that's kind of our sweet spot, and and we haven't even fully balanced that correctly yet. So yeah, give us time.
And the last question I'll give is, what can you tell us about if you're doing some sort of guilds, and if so, what can you tell us about it?
Yes, we want to do something with guilds for sure. Like SDF, he was actually like a guild leader, in World of Warcraft. So definitely, we want to do something with guilds. We have no idea what we're gonna do with guilds, though.
All right,
we're at that stage right now. Yeah.
Listen, thank you so much for your time. Like, you guys are doing an amazing job. It's a lot of fun. I don't want to take up any more of your time. You've sticking back late just to chat to us. If you are late to this, it'll be up on my VODs. Otherwise, I'll put it up on YouTube, and you guys can get that on YouTube. But yeah, pleasure having a chat with you. If you're open to it, I'll chat to you after the next playtest. I'm sure I'm going to have more questions and stuff. And I might bring some friends along next time too. I know people like Sacriel and Wellen and even Sequisha, and there's heaps of guys that would love to jump in and have a chat to you and that. So if you're open to it,
that'd be awesome. I just want to say thank you to them also, because they've been so supportive, even from the way back, those original playtests. And so if there's any way we could contact them directly and say thank you,
follow them on Twitter. I'm sure they'll follow you back.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks so much, mate.
Thank you so much.
No worries. Pleasure. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Have a good evening. Bye.
All right, chat. Just let me switch my camera back. Claps in the chat for Terry. Fucking W devs, eh? They just seem really lovely. Really lovely. Kind of too lovely.